used to laugh at me. Used to show them on my record something casually. Used to say it was a passion, I'm a path to be. Then they told me that I couldn't, so I had to be. Tell me what they really think about it now. Used to hate it, but I guarantee they're proud. Had to do it just to show them that I could, yeah. Now I finally think I took it where I should, yeah. I had jokes on you and now you're on and laughing. I did a whole lot of winning, look, it came from a passion. I see a whole lot of no ones I can see out in public. And they may think a lot of things, man, at least think something, now you the judge. Hey, now tell me where you ended up, yeah. Look, I bet it was a simple job, yeah. Look, I went and took a different route, yeah. Look, that's why my life is different now. Back in my feelings, look, when I wasn't so gifted and I was learning to do this, and all I heard were the critics, and now I'm playing for that shit. Look, I was way out the basis, but I just needed some talent so I could wait this to greatness, oh yeah. You ain't ever think this, no, no, no. Stop me while I started, homie, whoa, whoa, whoa. Now this shit settled, just go better and better, but I'll always remember, yeah, yeah.
Welcome back to That1 Podcast. Your boy C-Roc here. Shout out to Ken. She lost her voice. You might have heard her talking on some of the episodes, and it was a little raspy, and I thought it would sell better, actually. But it just got to the point where she needed to rest. So we're back with just me and my guest today. Mark Young's here from Ryze Agency. He's also the author of Date Your Clients. I already took a look at this book, and it is, I'm in so alignment with the message in it from it, and you guys got to check it out. So Mark, welcome to the show, man.
It's a hell of an endorsement to start with, man. Like, you're gonna make me live up to those now.
Look, I just look at the table of contents, and I'm like, all right, yeah, I agree with this stuff. It's amazing.
Well, I tend to be a little irreverent by nature, so yeah, it's kind of where that comes from.
and the great thing is, shout out to the Lollies for the introduction. Anthony, Teresa, phenomenal people. Yeah. Keep introducing me to great people. And I share everybody that I know that aligns with them to them. And relationships are so important, man. And let's start off with that, I guess. Relationships. What's that meant to you in life and business?
You know what? I'll tell you what. I know we were chatting a little bit before this, and I didn't want to get too deep because I wanted to get into this stuff live, right? Yeah. Relationships, they're everything, man. Like the reality is like there's no in our crazy cyber Zoom world, and it's like I love that we're doing a podcast knees to knees. Like I do podcasts all the time, and it's like I'm so tired of Zoom, dude. Like I'll get on an airplane and fly someplace just to actually have personal time with people because you can't get away from that need for relationship, but there's rules to all those relationships too, though, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, there's the efficiency, one aspect of the virtual podcasting or the meetings that when COVID came around, everybody was on Zoom. That's where the revolution started, right?
Right.
And I think there was what's the word I'm looking for?
It also taught us how to use QR codes.
Yeah.
Because those were around for a long time before COVID. And then we all learned that we couldn't order at a restaurant without a damn thing. Exactly.
Yeah, all that stuff. but you know, the efficiency's there and that's good, but there is also the balance. And I love being in person.
Yeah.
You know, I've did 1,000+ episodes of my show virtually and probably 1,100 as a guest. And then I just had this thing like, I don't know, 5 months ago, I got to get in person, man. Yeah. I got to get out on the road. I love it. I love meeting people. The energy's different. So where did it start for you understanding the importance of relationships? I mean, you mentioned your dad was a co-host of a podcast. So I'm just kind of guessing that your dad had a good influence on your life.
Oh, he's done tons of podcasts. He still does some pretty big podcasts, and he's done those for a long time. Relationship for me, you know what I'm going to tell you? Like my background's actually in clinical psychology, if you can imagine that, right? Okay. Yeah, I'm right up your alley here, bro. But with that in mind, it's like there's just something to be said for that knees to knees time with people. And now, as you mentioned, I work in marketing, which is really more of that consumer psychology side of things that I'm always digging into. But it's talking to brands about how do you actually build relationship with people? Because so much of our world, I mean, a la Amazon and global economics, is so commoditized. And it's like the only thing that I can bring to you that's different from what everyone else does is literally me. And in that space, and that's the same thing, right? Like, I mean, even when you're talking about, you know, romantic couples and whatnot, like your wife, like you bring her you know, and that's different from anything else or anyone else that she could have chosen. It's like that relationship is unique. It needs to be genuine. There needs to be integrity in it where there's a level of trust and intimacy. And I think that happens even in this social media world that we live in, right? Like relationships are the key of it. And unfortunately, I'll say that it's almost like a pseudo intimacy that people build, right? Like I know everything that Kim Kardashian does, and I don't know Kim Kardashian. Like I don't know anything about her, and she'd trip over me and never know who I was. But people feel like they have that, and
they feel like they know her.
They do, and it's like, and it's
weird.
So fake. But at the same time, it's like people are craving that. And again, to that point.
So here's the thing. I was just thinking about this. So I was thinking about there's kind of a coming back to in person.
Love it.
You know, like we go this one way so hard, it's got to swing back the other way. And I'm starting to see
100%.
that.
Same.
And I think that we can be ahead of the curve with a lot of that. That's what That1's all about. It's like, hey, how can we get people connected again and get back in person? So I love that. And something else I was going to ask you. Oh, so speaking about the transactional, it swung so far one way that it became all transactional, right?
Yes.
And so there's 3 T's I think about: transactional, transformative, which leads to transcending. I don't know what the word is. Transcendation. Transcendental, but transcending, right? Like you can't transcend until you get transformational. We're in the transactional phase. So talk about that with you when you're working with your clients. By the way, who do you work with? Who's your niche client at Ryze?
So we predominantly, I'll say 80% of our clientele is in the biohacking space, which is where I know Teresa and Anthony Lawley. So we work in that biohacking space. We've got multiple clients that are in that biohacking space, from supplement companies to skincare to medical device, multiple different things in that space. And I think where I always approach a marketing plan in that is consumers want to know the story behind where these things came from. And in that biohacking natural health space, I say that just about every company I talk to, and there has this, you know, I had a problem, nobody could solve it. I went on a mission to fix it, and this is what I found. And now I want to go take it to everyone.
And they become evangelistic about it.
Correct.
Right?
Like, and these become these founder stories, I call them. That these founder stories literally are almost like Mad Libs. You know, it's like I had fill in the blank problem, and then no doctor could solve my problem, right? And then I discovered fill in the blank.
Yep.
And this becomes the entire brand story. Like I can literally like Mad Lib these things on a website. Not to say they're not genuine; they're very genuine. Yeah. But when we talk about relationships and marketing, it's like you get those founder stories, and a lot of what we're dealing with is that consumers need to know the founder story. They want to believe in the passion of the person who took on the project to begin with, right?
Yep.
You created this product because of a problem you had, and then what? And people want to be part of that. And I'll tell you what, it's very story brand. If you're familiar with Donald Miller, like love Don. And it's like, but just getting into that, people are the heroes in their own story. And everybody needs their Gandalf. Yep. Right?
Yep.
Like Gandalf's the guide who just shows
100%.
up, gives some really sage advice, but you're the hero of the story. And that's the way we speak to consumers. Like they want to know who Gandalf is. They want that relationship.
So the gap that you're filling too is that when you become an evangelist about something after going through a setback, a health scare, whatever, and then you figure out this aha moment, this thing that comes about and you're like, oh, it works. You get so excited. And then you run to social media, right?
Yep.
Without necessarily dialing in the story, but also you run to social media thinking that you're going to go viral with it. And then a lot of people are going to see it. And then you put one post out a week, right? And then you maybe post maybe even once a day, right? But then you see that there's numbers that are just like nothing compared to the people that are out there doing or know the game. So you guys fill this gap of dialing in the story, but then also teaching people how to get it out effectively in front of most amount of people, and the right audience.
Yeah,
too.
Absolutely. So a lot of what we do as an agency, you talk about, you know, relationships and who are the ideal clients. And like I said, 80% of our clients fall in this natural health and wellness space. And it's just my personal interest. So it's where a lot of my contacts are, right? Like you see, you walk into your lobby and I know everybody who's here already.
That was wild.
So it's kind of funny because when we build those types of relationships, there gets to be that kinship, that camaraderie. And from a marketing standpoint, what it does is builds lifetime value.
Yeah.
Because if I like you, I keep buying from you, right? It's like you go to the restaurant where the server always treats you great because that's how you feel important. Yep. And those same types of relationships build with your consumers. So when we see an entrepreneur who's struggling, who's fumbling to try to get that voice out there, that's the first thing we're paying attention to is how do we craft that message in a succinct way? Because most people who are trying to tell their own stories, it's like a run-on sentence that never ends, right? And people are completely disconnected. They don't know what the person is saying. That the message is getting blurred. They're hitting all these talk points that they think are important, but usually what they do, they spend all this time, Mike, talking about themselves. And what we really try to do is to craft that in such a way that I'm like, look, I don't want to go to your website and hear all about you. I want to talk about my favorite topic, me.
Yeah.
But enough about me. Let's talk about me.
How do they do that? Right? By like, so vulnerability is important, right? Being vulnerable, transparent, because that authenticity comes through. So how do you balance that and sharing your story about yourself and what you went through with also focusing on the viewer?
Well, it's not a matter of having to balance it. It's a matter of having to sequence it.
Okay, there you
So
go.
I'll say, you first get me involved in the story because you let me know how it's relevant to my life.
Gotcha.
Then you build the intimacy.
Gotcha.
But if I don't know why you're even relevant to me, I hit the back.
I don't care about your story.
I'm done. I don't care who you are. I only care how it's important to me.
Yeah. So you call out the person that you want to see it first. For example, if you're doing a video online or something, right? You're going to call out to the person that you want to see it, gets their attention, why they should listen, and then say, this is why I'm talking about this. Let me share something with you.
Yeah. If I told you, like, struggling with back pain, and if you don't struggle with back pain, you're not even going to pay attention to the rest of the message. Like it doesn't matter, right? Like I've got to get you to self-select into that message. So, and that's kind of the way that we always work with our clients, is helping craft that story in such a way that we do that. Now, to that end, we're a full service agency. So we do media buying, we do web development, we do all this other kind of stuff as well, social media management, all those good things. But all of that stuff needs to be done in harmony.
Yeah.
And there needs to be a harmonized message that goes from start to finish. And again, we tell people, like, we've got to speak to where the consumer is. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about you. We're talking about their problem. Right. And after we get them into the story, right, then we pull the next person in. And again, I always go back to stupid Lord of the Rings kind of stuff, right? Like the whole chapter is talking about Frodo. You don't meet Gandalf immediately because he's not the most important person in the story. He's the most powerful. He's the wisest. Yep. And yet, like, throughout the story, he just kind of pops in here and there. It's like, because he's not the main character. He's not the main character. Yeah. And so the whole story starts off, and chapter 1 doesn't even mention him, because unless I'm tuned into the hero, the guide doesn't.
Yes. Got it. All right. So you started out as a clinical psychologist, you said?
It's true.
Okay. And so why did you get into that in the first place? Were you kind of pushed into something from maybe your parents, or maybe, see, I talk about this thing, there's a life continuum that happens, and kids tend to pick up the goals of their parents. And so a lot of doctors and lawyers and especially immigrants, right? They're pushed into what their parents' expectations are. Was that for you?
It was not.
Okay.
I got to be honest with you. Like, so I actually, my first career, as dumb as this was, I've owned businesses since I was 16 years old. But I actually became an accountant, which you didn't see that coming, did you?
No.
Yeah. I was an accountant in my first career. Totally not my thing. Like, I love accounting. It's nice and buttoned up in black and white, but at the same time, like, I kind of enjoy being in the mud. And went into education and have a bunch of advanced degrees in various things, including clinical psych. And it's like, but I was a college professor for years.
Okay.
As crazy as that may sound, but yeah, as a college professor for years, I said, I learned the art of edutainment.
Yeah.
That is, people don't care what you're saying unless they see the value in what it is. Right. And I'll say that's what I do all day now.
You keep your kids awake when they're in the class. Absolutely. If you're entertaining them.
Absolutely. Like I was able to get great reviews and also have students who learn stuff, because I understood that I can't just stand there and talk at them. Like, they need to be involved in the story. They need to feel like there's an entertainment factor to what's going on, because we learn when we're actually enjoying, not when we're miserable.
Yep.
And to that extent, I was in education for many years. Ended up leaving education and moving into marketing, which maybe this is where you're going. My father also owns an advertising agency.
I knew it was there somewhere.
So yeah, it's got to be there somewhere. So yeah, I swore I'd never be part of the family business, and I'll be damned if I didn't end up starting my own business just like that.
So what was your dad marketing? What was he doing?
So he does a lot of the same sort of stuff, although he does different work, and that is they're really focused on brick and mortar. Like, if you want to get into Walmart, like they're the people that help you get on the shelves. Okay. Versus we're more of a direct to consumer marketing firm. So actually we work together really well in that respect, because a lot of times, like, we're on with a client and we're like, okay, they're ready to go to retail. Or he's talking to a client. He's like, look, you're not ready for what we do. Let's go start over here. Yeah. And then we'll grow you up so that you are ready, because you don't have the bandwidth yet.
Gotcha. Okay. And so then how did, I want to know the journey for you as far as the entrepreneurship journey and understanding, like, the importance of, for yourself, because you got to be a living demonstration of what you're going to be doing for your clients. Right. And that's why I've done over 1,000 podcasts of my own and 1,100 as a guest. Right. Yeah. Very few founders have done that. Right. But I believe that you got to be a living demonstration. So yeah, obviously you wrote the book, you're marketing yourself. Like, take us on the journey from you and how to understanding that point of showing people through you first. Yeah.
So, I mean, so many things I could go on from there, Mike, but I'll say the first thing that I'll say to that is, yes, obviously, right? I need to be an ambassador for what we do, first of all, but I laughingly say we're the marketing agency with no marketing department. And I almost say that proudly, right? Like I say, like, we don't have a marketing department. We don't have a sales team. Every single client we work with is a referral from somebody else. Every single one is somebody that I've networked into a conversation, or I've attended a mastermind group and just made relationship with people, because that's where the trust builds. That's where the solidarity builds. That's where even if something goes wrong, we still like each other and overcome the obstacle goes together, right? So much of that stuff plays out. So I laughingly say, like, I am the marketing department for our own agency, because every client we work with knows me through some other channel, because we're not out buying Google AdWords for our own agency, right? We're not out trying to build fancy websites for ourselves. We're not out paying money to market what we do.
Yeah.
Everything we do is very organic in the way that we market ourselves.
So how does that carry over to your clients? So do you talk to them about how media buy could turn you into more transactional at first? Because this relationship thing, like the way I do my business too, we don't run ads. It's all through relationship, networking, and like it's so much easier. The client relationship is so much easier.
Yeah. Well, so here's what I'll say. Like I'll give you an example and tell you, like, let's say we put together a digital campaign, right? Like let's just use Meta as an example. Like we're going to go give Mark Zuckerberg money and advertise a product or something online. I'm talking to my clients going, look, first, I want you to go on 5 podcasts, because now you're, first of all, creating content.
Yep.
But aside from that, it makes all the digital ships all rise, because people have heard about you now. There's an awareness that already exists around you. Like, I can't pay for mind share at an efficient rate. Like, all of these things need to rise together. So the more that we can get in front of podcast guests, the more that we can do relationship building things, these knees to knees type things, the other stuff comes with it.
Yep.
And then all the tides go up, because now you're being searched on Google. So I'm buying more efficient words because people have heard of you before. Your people check you out online. Now I can get into a remarketing strategy as opposed to getting into just buying into cold traffic. Yep. So many things go around that. But to your point, it all happens in harmony. It doesn't happen in a bubble.
Yeah. And it's a holistic approach. Like it's 100%. So I talk about this a lot. Like, people don't realize when you go on podcasts, for example, you go on that person's website when they publish it. And then, so you're talking about Google search. People, when they're going to work with you, they're going to Google search you. They're going to go on Instagram or whatever. Yep. And then your name pops up in several different things, and people see you being interviewed by multiple different people.
Credibility.
Perceived credibility and authority, right?
Yep.
You got to back it up. But I always talk about perceived goes through the roof. And people see that and are like, oh, I got to go deeper with that person. So that's huge that you understand that. I preach it all the time, and
100%.
But what we want our clients to do, and correct me if I'm wrong from your point of view, is we want them to stay in their genius.
Yeah.
Stay in what you do. Don't worry about this stuff, right? You go find the people that know the different things, build your village around you, and you'll excel, right? Speak to that.
I was telling you ahead of time.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I do with myself, right?
Yeah,
like I don't need to go learn to be the expert of everything. I just need to find those experts.
100%.
It's Dan Sullivan, Ben Hardy's who, not how, right?
Yeah.
Like this is not a matter of how do I go to do what it is that I want to do, but who can I find that can do that for me, who's already an expert in that field.
Yeah.
And it saves me an incredible amount of brain cells having to burn those off and learn something that I'm probably not going to be good at anyways.
Yeah. And then you also mentioned the who, the how, and all that. How, right? How often did you commit to something? You had a vision to achieve something, whether it was build a business or whatever it was, and you had a vision, right? And you committed to the vision, but you had no clue the how.
Oh, I do that all the time.
Yeah, it's important to point out. I say all the time, and I want people to, they don't always listen to me, so I get other people to agree with me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No.
Like, think about back in the past, like how many times you've accomplished something, you're like, I had no idea what the heck I was doing.
I'm going to add a layer in there too.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to say that there's also giving yourself permission to fail at something that you're not good at too, because I mean, I'll say I've failed one less time than I've succeeded.
Yeah.
Like that's the goal, is to just succeed one more time than you failed. Like every time you fall, get back up. It only takes a difference of 1 to still be walking.
Yeah. You gotta try to fail. Like I want to go out and, because it's a data collection opportunity.
If I'm not scared, I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah. There's a word I learned, I think it was entropy. I was listening to Rogan
it's very thermodynamic
today, and there was a physicist on there, and he was talking about consciousness and how our goal, really our purpose, is to get things as clear as possible to us and put the dots together. That's what we're trying to do. And when they're not and there's chaos, I think he used the word entropy. Is that
so entropy is actually from the second law of thermodynamics, which refers to that
physics,
anything
right?
in nature, anything in nature will go to a state of chaos on its own.
Yeah. So we're trying to get out of that and have less entropy is what he was talking about. So that's, to me, what I'm looking at is, okay, how do I do that? I got to attempt things. Well, you can call it fail, whatever you want. I have an intention, but maybe it doesn't hit that mark, but no pun intended. But I also am gathering data, right? To get away from entropy. Did I use the word right? I just learned.
I suppose it's true. Like trying to get out of chaos.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's bringing order and structure into things.
Yeah.
And the best way to do that is to find the people who already understand how to bring order to something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rather than flailing around like a drowned rat.
So speaking of failure, I want to know, like, what was the toughest time in your life?
Oh God. I don't know, man. That's a tough one. Now you're bearing all.
Yeah, man.
Toughest time of my life. I'll tell you. I actually spent, I spent a considerable amount of time in education. And of course, when you're an entrepreneur and you're a person who's willing to try anything, you end up with failure after failure, right? Mm-hmm. Which you got to have an ego strong enough to deal with that many failures and still feel good. Toughest point of my life. I was in my late 30s. And I decided to get out of education. That is, I had moved up from college professor and I worked in a private university group and was the COO of a $500 million organization. And I understood education. I understood finance. These were all things I got and it all made sense. And the organization that I worked with, I'm going to say there were some integrity issues. When I moved to Florida, I live here now. And when I moved to Florida, I got to see it up close because I used to work remote. I'm originally from Detroit.
Okay.
And I actually worked remote for years and traveled all over the place to go to different places operationally and whatnot. But I moved to Florida, and 8 months after moving to Florida, realized that we were not as aligned as I thought we were. Yeah. And some stuff had happened. And I was like, look, I'm out. Like, I moved across the country. My ex and I had broken up. My grandmother who raised me had died. Like all these things all happened within a year's amount of time. And I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm moving to Florida. They made me a sweet offer. I'm gone. 8 months into the sweet offer, I'm like, I'm quitting. Like literally, this was what I thought was my moment. And then here I am at my beautiful beachside condo. And I'm like, all right, I suppose I won't finish unpacking. Like I don't know what I'm going to do. And
did you sign a year lease?
Yeah, but I was close to the end of it. So I did some consulting on the side and stuff. And when the year was up, I remember calling my dad and just being like, I'm just coming back home for a while. Like I sold my house. I'm like, man, I just don't know what I'm going to do. And I'll tell you what, man, like I think I was 38, 39 years old. And that moment was kind of like it all fell apart. And what is this? And if anybody's ever been in that it all fell apart moment, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's that sinking in the bottom of your stomach. That's like, you can talk the talk and say
it all too well.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying?
Right now for thinking about this.
All the talk that goes on about, build back better kind of stuff, right? Like maybe that's not the reference I wanted, but but the whole idea of
wait a minute, that brand worked for you. They're
not claiming that one.
They got you.
Nope. But we can talk about the, I'll always be okay. I'm going to, but when the rubber hits the road and you're like, this is like me in the pavement right now. Like, what am I going to do? And that was scary. Yeah. I got to tell you, that was scary. That was like literally not knowing what I was going to do. And I'm a person who's like thrown my entire life into my career. Like I love what I do. Yeah. And it's like, and when what you do goes away, it really calls into question, who are you at the core?
This topic keeps coming up, bro. I can't tell you how many times this topic's come up in my podcast. This is, so I wrote a book called Rocket Fuel, Convert Setbacks, Become Unstoppable. Yep. I go out, I'm on podcasts, I'm preaching this message, right? Store everything in your tank instead of your trunk. When things happen, store it in your tank, because if it puts in your trunk, it weighs you down, slows you down, right? Then I'm in the mortgage business and rates go up, inventory goes down. I hate the business anyway. I want to get out. Money stops coming in like it was, and my ego takes a hit and all this stuff, right? And then I'm like, oh, shoot, I got to be a living demonstration of what I talked about and preached about and wrote about. Oh, man, this is way worse than I thought it was going to be. And the more advanced you get in your career, the harder the fall is, the farther away it is. But the ego takes a hit, you start questioning. But the problem is, I want to hear your take on this. I mean, this is your field. I realized from interviewing so many people, the darkest times in their life was when they attached their identity to what they did. Right. And I call that your vehicle. That's not who you are. It's not your identity. It's your vehicle. You can get in and out of vehicles if you know your identity's separate from that. And for me, it was the darkest time. Everybody I talked darkest time when I asked that question. Attaching your identity to what you do is a big no-no. And how can we be proactive with that?
I can't agree with you more. And to that story, it's like you get down into the weeds of what you're doing. And, I had some amazing people around me at the time. And it's like they all thought I lost my mind. Yep. Yeah, it was one of those times. I was like the always do everything according to the book guy. And all of a sudden, like I shaved my head and got tattoos and they were like, what the hell? Like, and I'm like, it's all right. Like, this is me just like doing the things I never would have done. Like, I'm going to step out because it doesn't change who I am. Yep. And in a matter of months, dude, like I was already back in the grind. And it was like, I'm not going to sit around and do nothing. And I laugh because you mentioned my dad a minute ago. And what's funny is like when people around in my family and whatnot were like, I think Mark's in a bad place. I'm worried about him, so on and so forth. Like, I think we need to have a conversation, so on and so forth. You know, the one thing I will always go back to my dad and say that his answer to the whole thing was, he's fine.
Yeah, I love it.
He's my son. He's
I love
fine.
it.
And because like he knew that this was just a blip.
Yep.
That this was a me grabbing my footing. This had nothing to do with character. And he's just like, oh no, he'll be back in a minute. Just give him a second.
Foundational stuff's there. So
Absolutely.
would you remember waking up in the morning during that time? I have this thing when I wake up in the morning, like you're in a dream, wherever you are when you're sleeping, and then you wake up and then you have this reality moment, like this thing that strikes you and you're like,
my God.
Shoot, I got to deal with this today. Oh, I forgot I was here. What did you tell yourself in those moments? Because I know I talk to myself all the time, but what did you say to yourself in the moments to keep the day going and get this started? And
it was an interesting time in my life. And I'll say like, I spent all my time at the gym. I looked great. So it's like, that was the one thing that I was super happy about was like, I was in the gym nonstop because that kept my sanity. But it was like through that time, there was so much uncertainty that I'm a person who has to map out worst case scenarios.
Okay.
And when I started going and mapping out the worst case scenario, I'm like, all right, what's the worst thing that can happen in this scenario? And if this is the worst thing,
what was it?
Then
what was your worst thing?
I laughed
because I'm going to share mine with you.
Well, when I kind of laughed because I remember my dad when I was just like, look, I'm just moving back to Florida. And he's like, why are you moving back to Florida? You're not going back to anything. And I'm like, I don't care. And he's like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I'm going to get in the car and I'm going to drive until the map turns blue and I'm going to stop. And he's like, then what? I'm like, I'll bartend. I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. Like, man. What does it matter? Like, and I'm like, because it's okay because I'm going to be me.
Yeah.
And, and then minutes later, I was back in my own business, doing my own thing, blowing shit up, how we do.
So you're old enough to remember Cocktail.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what goes through my head every time I go. Like, what's the worst thing? I go to the Caribbean and bartend somewhere.
You literally pick bartending?
Yeah. I say the same thing because when I was watching that go back in college, I was like, that's what I want to do. And I went into the restaurant business. But then I realized it sucked. And
I worked at a restaurant through college.
Yeah. So I had that, like, it was an awesome movie. Shout out to Tom Cruise. But no, I even took it a step further because I was like, okay, well, what if, a hurricane comes through and washes out the Caribbean? Like, I was just going, that's a great exercise. Then I thought to myself, I came into this world butt naked, not being able to speak, not knowing anybody, no wisdom, and I made it this far. Think about that for a second. Now, if I had to go back to being butt naked now, don't picture that, please. But if I had to, I would have experience, relationships. Yeah. I could talk, I can communicate. I mean, how much further could I go? Sure. So that exercise is anybody that's going through tough times, just do the worst case scenario. It is. And then you realize until you're plucked from this planet, you're unstoppable.
Here's what I'm going to tell you. Like, I'm going to bring this back to a client relationship also and tell you like these worst case scenarios for me anyways, when I map that stuff out, I'm like, okay, can I live with this? And would I still be here? Would I still be alive? Yes. So what would I do in that situation to move forward? Two things happened to me during that time. And the first thing was I learned that even if it got as bad as it would, I'm still me.
Yeah.
And that identity was shifted from what I did to who I am. And that makes a big difference to me. Like I'm, vehemently defensive of that. Second thing is I also gained a confidence of where I am right now that even if what I do right now all fell apart, I'm going to be fine.
Yep.
Because after multiple times of deciding I was going to blow it up and start over, like multiple blow it up and start overs over the course of my life, that being just one.
Yeah.
And it was like, now I'm to the point that I'm like, well, man, that's happened a few times and I've survived it every time. So maybe I just shouldn't be afraid of that anymore. And what that does for me is it makes me push even further than I did the last time.
Yeah.
Because the bigger that fall, the better the comeback.
100%.
And it's like, I'm almost daring the next comeback.
And you're being a living demonstration again. I'm going back to that living demonstration for the people that work for you, for the people that are going to work for you in the future, your clients. It's just it's a huge thing to show people what you can do. And also to show people that you're not alone when you go through these things.
And I'll add to that, there's a transparency, as you had mentioned before. And it's like there's a genuine relationship that builds in intimacy. And when I'm willing to share with you the bad things about me and share with you the fears that I have or the struggles that I've overcome, like gone is the sage on the stage kind of kind of sales pitch that's
Yeah.
going to tell you like, I'm the marketer that's going to build your business. I'm like, no, I'm the one who's watched a bunch of brands fail. Like I'm the one who've had my own failures. Like I'm the one who sits there on the telephone call, listening to you panicked about what happens if your business doesn't succeed.
Yeah.
Like I get it. And, you know, we get back to like the clinical psych stuff. And it's like, I laughingly say that it's like the client whisperer is what they call me at my office. Cause it's like, because clients are all over, they're afraid, they're entrepreneurs, they're reactive, they're fearful in many cases. They're driven way out of their depth and want to be over here, but we're still kind of back here. And we need to gauge how that journey measures out over time, because it's not all going to happen overnight. But those types of things, like I've been there. Like, I mean, I've literally sit on the telephone with clients sometimes. I'm like, look, I get it, because this is what I would do from a business perspective. But sometimes we have to make cash flow decisions, because a great business move may not be affordable based on cash. And sometimes your cash flow moves are terrible business decisions. Like go take out a loan to grow a business when you don't know that the business is going to grow. Sometimes a terrible idea, you know, or giving up a portion of your business to go into VC so that you can grow bigger. Well, now you grew bigger and so did their portion. Like these are all very calculated decisions. And like I said, having been there, having done so many of those things myself, I think the relationships that I build with our clients are extraordinarily relational. And part of it is because they're relatable.
Yep. I was going to use the word relatable. All right. I'm going to go deep for a second and talk about, not that we haven't already, but I want to talk about
He just went to the worst moment of my life.
Yeah.
Now we're going to go deep.
We're going to go deeper beyond that.
I'm like suicidal.
Getting a shovel out.
He's like, now we're going to go deep.
Yeah. So let's talk about consciousness, quantum, energy. Do you get into any of that, spirituality?
Sure.
Share whatever you want to share with that, because I don't know.
Oh, no, you're leading that conversation.
Okay. So, well, I mean, are you a spiritual person?
Yes.
Okay. And did it start when you were younger? Like what kind of household did you grow up as far as spirituality?
I grew up in a Christian home loosely.
Yeah.
But absolutely, when I went to a private school, but then was very active in my church when I lived up north as well. So very deep roots in my Christian faith, but also have a master's degree in theology. So I've also studied multiple religions. I was going to ask you, still read the Bible, how the journey went and all that. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, awesome. I didn't know that about you. Okay. See, I just had this inclination. So I've been reading the Bible since I was younger, but I didn't really understand it. And what I found out was I just took a course on how to study and how to know. And one of the main things is that never pass a word you don't understand. And I don't think it's taught enough in churches to the congregation. They always talk about get in the word, read your Bible, but they don't talk about stop. When you see a word or concept you don't understand, stop. Don't go on, because there's an actual physiological reaction that happens to you when you get confused about something. And anything you go on, you have a problem. So I noticed that, and I started reading the Bible that way and stopping when I didn't understand something. And it changed everything for me. And then my relationship with Jesus got just amazing and strong. And so, and I'm 48 now. So it's just happened over the last probably 5 years. And it's just been an amazing journey. But I'd love to hear your journey from when you were a kid, obviously long story short, but when you were a kid till now, and how that's, affected you and what it's like now. So I love all of that, by the way. And I hate that I'm older than you.
I'll be 48 February 7th.
I'll be 50 in July.
Oh, really?
So yeah.
Look at this guy. He knows what he's doing with biohacking. Longevity.
So I'll say that like I grew up in a home that was incredibly unstable. I was a high school oops and was raised by my grandmother.
Okay.
So a lot of instability in my upbringing, but I did go to a private school that was a religious-based school. So it's like there was always that grounding. Not gonna lie, through the college years, did my fair share of damage.
Yep.
I think we all have to do our thing. And then I would say probably like around 25, 26 years old, I was like, this isn't me. Like what's happening, that I feel that I'm not disconnected from all this, and ended up getting re-engaged. Huge part of my life has been like global mission stuff, where I'm actually going out and serving in other countries. I love travel, but at the same time, like that stuff's really cool. And then I actually became a worship leader at my church up north in Detroit area. So very much grounded in that. But I'll tell you from a theological standpoint, I think that there's a huge miss that happens, and I'm probably a little out there for some people's theology, to be honest with you. But read your Bible, do your stuff, 100%. I would never discourage somebody from doing that. But to your point, we also need to read it with context. because we have a tendency to read things in the context of how we've lived our lives and not in the context of how the people writing it lived theirs.
Yeah, that's true.
We also need to understand that everything we're reading is in the context of a greater worldview. And maybe everything we know isn't everything that's there. And I think that there's a lot to be said there. And I'll tell you, like, and I tell people that the relationship that needs to happen between you and your creator is not transactional. It's relational.
There we go again with that word.
And when people want to have transactional, say your 7 Hail Marys kind of relationships with God, like that wasn't the ask. Like that wasn't
so huge, man.
You built that in.
It's
like
tough.
don't go repeat somebody else's prayers. Like don't go take your devotion and just read the prayer that's in the book and call that your own. It's not. Like if you came home to your wife every day and said the Lord's Prayer, you said the exact same words every single day at the same time, like she probably like, what is going on here? Like, and it's like, and I think God's asking that same type of thing, like, know me, have a relationship with me. If there's a word you don't understand, ask why that word, like dig deeper into what's going on here. Because I think from a spiritual perspective, and I think this goes deep in 100 levels, but this idea that a transactional relationship with God is not at all what we've been called to. And I'll tell you that there is a greater, deeper, more purposeful relationship to be had when you focus on the relational aspect. And that's the biggest turning point that I think anybody can come to is how do you, and again, I'm going back to transactional versus relational. And like, I'm just beating that drum here today, but I think it's the most important thing that you can possibly get to. Like when you can genuinely have relationship and dig deeper. Like you want to get to know your spouse deeper as your relationship grows. Like if you don't know God deeper now than you did 20 years ago, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. Well, and when you develop this relationship with your creator, all your other relationships get better. It's amazing how that works. Well, I mean, all the ones that should be in your life, let's say that, because it could end some bad relationships.
Also,
and that's okay.
That's okay.
It's okay to let people go. So one thing I wanted to point out with that was Jelly Roll's song, I only pray to God when I need him, or I only talk to God when I need him. So many people do that. They only
American anthem.
That's the transactional thing. Right. And so for me, I've made a huge intention to pray all the time, gratitude all the time. And when something, I meet a great guy like you, today. And I just walked in down the hallway and I said, thank you, God. I appreciate that, and I make that one little prayer and it just makes everything better. Yeah. So I appreciate you sharing and being vulnerable with your relationship and your journey.
I'm going to tell you, you've got a copy of my first book here, but my second one publishes in about a month. Okay. And it's about gratitude. So you're kind of making me laugh because
good segue, right?
I have a gratitude problem. I always have had a gratitude problem. And
in what way?
I don't stop and pay attention to all that I have as much as I should.
Yeah.
And it's not because I'm not grateful. It's because I don't take the time to acknowledge it. And I think there's something to be said to humble yourself and stop for a minute and just be like, wow, like I need to pay attention to that more. I'm actually, that book is literally, and it's humorous, it's goofy and whatever.
But it's going to be therapeutic for you too, probably, right?
100%. Right? Well, because it's like the entire book is like giving thanks for stupid things in life. Like
you're setting an intention for your life as you're writing it as the author.
Yes.
I freaking love it, man. This, for me, everything I've built, I don't say that like I have the credit for it. God gave me powers and a vision to do this. And then I glorify like this stuff that we're doing here with the relationships, Jet and Votion Studios, relationship we're going to develop with you guys. It's just, you got to just give credit to God, man. And it's so much more fulfilling. So anyway.
No accident.
So this book here, Date Your Clients, check it out. And then also, what's the other book called? The new one?
It's actually called Lower the Bar, but I'm not putting it out there yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then if people want to go deeper with you, where do they go?
You can reach out to me directly. It's probably easier to say that I'm mark@dateyourclients.com.
Okay.
That'll actually get you there that we don't have to worry about spelling. Okay. My agency is called Ryze Agency, RYZE agency.com. But again, mark@dateyourclients is easier to spell.
Awesome. I appreciate your time, brother. You coming in, man.
Appreciate you.
All right, guys, you've been watching or listening, however you're consuming this content. Your boy C-Roc here with Mark from Date Your Clients, as he asked me to refer to him. And look, guys, we just want to keep bringing you great content and great people. And feel free to reach out to our guests at any time, man. Build relationships. It's open to you. They're all cool and accessible. So until next time, it's your boy C-Roc signing off. Make sure you subscribe and check out also Motivation Success Network. Shout out to Dennis and his team and Jet here at Devotion Studios in Clearwater. It's your boy C-Roc signing off. Until next time, be that one.